word trophy comes from the Greek tropeion, which means not a symbol of victory, but rather a monument to an enemy's defeat. To some, that difference may be mere semantics, but if you appreciate the challenge of racing flat out for 24 hours, the difference is as clear as the sparkling crystal on the face of the finest watch. It is why you come to the Rolex 24. To win, you must conquer an army of rivals, winners of a museum full of trophies, including those of the sport's most famous races and its most prestigious championships. They all know there is one unique trophy they cannot do without, and so they come to the Rolex 24. But there are other enemies to conquer as well. You must also overcome opponents such as fatigue, and darkness, and weather, and mechanical failure, and human error. They too are why you come to the Rolex 24. Throughout the race, the ticking of the clock for 24 long hours is your most fickle companion. When you are fit, rested, and running swiftly, time is your ally. But if you are stopped, or stranded, or broken, time becomes your enemy. It is the most formidable challenge of the Rolex 24. The world's best drivers and cars have been taking up this challenge for nearly a half-century, writing some of the most exciting chapters in the history books of the sport, creating the legends that have made this one of the greatest races in the world. That is also why you come to the Rolex 24. Welcome to Daytona, a beach synonymous with speed for nearly a century. The birthplace of NASCAR, a mecca for competition on both two wheels and four, a place known as the world center of racing. It's time for the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Great events call for great teams, and thus Speed is proud to join with our colleagues from Fox Sports to bring you the countdown to the Rolex 24, powered by Pontiac. Opening round of the Grand American Rolex Sports Car Series, presented by Crown Royal Special Reserve for 2007. You see the clock ticking away the final minutes before the race begins, at which point it will count up to 24 hours to decide our champions. And this morning, they gathered an international galaxy of racing stars, part of a field of over 200 drivers from 22 countries around the world, ready to take up the challenge of the Rolex 24. Hello, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha. Speed is proud to welcome you here on Fox. The first of 5 events we'll be bringing your way this year from motorsports realm, including 4 rounds of the Formula One World Championship. But today we're all about sports cars, and if you think you know Daytona International Speedway from our Fox coverage of the Daytona 500, you're about to see it in a whole new light. This is sports car racing, and it's all about this: the beautiful Rolex Daytona chronograph that will be presented to each of the winning drivers in 2 classes competing together over the next 24 hours. And we'll have 15 hours of it live for you here on Fox and on Speed. Now, sports car racing is a great respecter of traditions, and we have a terrific story of traditions right up front on today's starting grid. 45 years ago, one of America's greatest, Dan Gurney, won the original Daytona 3-Hour Continental. Despite a broken race car, he crawled across the line to score the victory. On Thursday, his youngest son, Alex Gurney, broke the track record to put his car on pole for today's Rolex 24. The new Gurney Racing Star is standing by with Calvin Fish.
Bob, that victory 45 years ago certainly established Dan Gurney as a household name here in the States. And tomorrow, his son, Alex Gurney, hopes that a victory here will do the same thing for his career. Alex, I know your dad was extremely excited about you capturing the pole position. What advice did he give you before the green flag today?
Well, basically not to hit anything. That's the main goal over the 24 hours. And really, even though we want to look good on TV, leading is not necessarily a priority because the race is so long. We just want to lead the last lap, basically.
All right, Alex, good luck. Certainly Alex Gurney and the Gainesco team hoping to get that monkey off their back and capture their first Daytona prototype victory, Bob.
All right, thanks very much, Calvin. Good luck to them. Now let's meet some of the other stars doing the crossover thing this weekend. How about 4 NASCAR Nextel Cup champions? Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, Bobby Labonte, and Jimmy Johnson. Gordon and Johnson, of course, winners of the NASCAR Nextel Cup Daytona 500. And only A.J. Foyt has ever done the double of the 2 biggest races here at Daytona. 2 guys with a shot at it are standing by with Brian Till.
Well, Bob, 2 of the most recognizable faces down on pit lane, Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon. Obviously, both of you guys, Nextel Cup champions. You both won at Daytona. Jimmy, a lot of people looking at you after winning the 2006 championship saying he is so busy with his PR work and stuff, there's no way he'll make the Rolex 24. But you're here. What is the magic that brings you back?
It's just a lot of fun to start off the racing season down here in Daytona with the Rolex series. Cars are fun to drive. You're with all these world-class drivers and teams, and it's something different. It's nice to drive something different than a Cup car all the time. So I have a really good time with it. This will be my third race doing this.
And Jeff Gordon has won at Daytona 12 times. If he can win this event, he'll join a very elite few. Only Hurley Haywood and the late Dale Earnhardt Sr. have won 13 times at Daytona, but you'd be the first person to do it in 2 different disciplines. You've been smiling all weekend, too. Are you catching the sports car bug?
I'm having a lot of fun. You know, we just don't get a chance to drive cars like this very often. It's just so much different than the NASCAR and the Cup cars. And, you know, to get to drive on the road course here at Daytona instead of the oval has been a lot of fun. And I give Jimmy some credit for getting me in this car. When I heard about him running it and he told me about his experience, it got, me more interested in it. And I couldn't be with a better team with Wayne Taylor, Max Angelelli, Jan Magnussen, and this whole Suntrust team's been a blast. I'm looking forward to this 24-hour race.
And it's going to be a great one. And these 2 guys, they are definitely going to contribute. Great to see them here, Bob.
No question about it, Brian. Thank you. Now let's turn to the open wheel world. Jimmy Vasser, Juan Pablo Montoya, and Paul Tracy, all Champ Car World Series titleists. From the IndyCar side of things, Scott Sharp, Tony Stewart, Scott Dixon, Dan Weldon, and Sam Hornish Jr., the latter 2 winners of the Indianapolis 500, part of a huge contingent from the Speedway in today's race. Let's meet 2 more drivers with glittering resumes with Chris Neville.
1 kart championship, 1 win at the Indy 500, 7 Formula One wins, 1 of which was the Grand Prix of Monaco. That's our open wheel star, Juan Pablo Montoya, and today he's going to do another first. 24 hours, you're sharing a car with 2 drivers. Juan, how does this affect your NASCAR program?
I think it's a great thing. In a way, it's going to give me a lot of experience. You know, the truck's got a lot of bumps, and I'll be driving up and down, left and right here, and it's going to give me, first to know where all the bumps are and everything, and the patience. It's a long race, and patience is so important.
Scott Pruitt also started his career in Formula Cars, has since built an impressive resume in sports cars. Scott, you've won this race 3 times. Today you're trying to do it with 3 rookies.
It's awesome, and look at the rookies. I mean, here we got Salvador Duran and JP. It's awesome. I mean, speed is not the problem with the Telmex car. It's just consistency and doing it hour after hour after hour. The car's running good. Unfortunately, qualifying was a bit messed up for us, but the car itself, it's been running strong. We've been top of the grid almost every session. Chip's right behind us. He's been honest. Be careful with the car. Be careful with the car. So I think it's going to be a great race and a great show.
Well, this is the Super Bowl of the Sports Car Rolex Series, but Scott Pruitt has also got to keep his eyes on that championship for 2007.
All right, thanks, Chris. How about that, man? Juan Pablo Montoya, with all that he's already done, this week he could add a victory in the Rolex 24, and in a few weeks, his first visit to the Daytona 500. 78 international championships, so many racing wins. These drivers and a host of others are about to begin the adventure of a professional lifetime. Why do they do it? The prestige, the Rolex watch, or maybe just that off-season long racing itch they just have to scratch in one of the biggest races in the world. The countdown to the Rolex 24 is powered by Pontiac and the 260 horsepower Solstice GXP. After winning a pair of NASCAR championships at the turn of the millennium, Pontiac moved their racing focus to road racing with huge success. Overall victory here at the Rolex 24 in 04. They followed up a year later with a 1-2-3 sweep of the overall in 05, and then they added 3 GT championships in 06. And the Pontiac Garage is a big hub of activity on the fan zone of the infield at Daytona International Speedway. Appearing this weekend, Louis XIV, and you'll hear them later tonight at the Pontiac Garage. We have fireworks, we have carnivals, and so much more How about the Ruby Tuesday 24? Racing, food, and fun. Just across the street from Daytona International Speedway on Thursday night, there was a big party with driving stars, race cars, and they will be serving for 24 hours from flag to flag here at the Rolex 24. A look at the countdown clock, about 18 and a half minutes to go to the start of this 24-hour marathon. And here's another of the great stories this weekend. Helio Castroneves on the left, Paul Tracy on the right, had a memorable match race in 2002 at the Indy 500. Late in the going, Tracy, following Castroneves, moved around the outside as he tried to pass for the lead. An accident at the other end of the track. Did he get by to take the lead and go on to win the Indy 500? It was given to the Penske team and Helio Castroneves. Let's take a closer look. Tracy around the outside. Where is the yellow light? You make the call. The arguments went on endlessly, but both men are here to race in the Rolex 24, and they are with Calvin Fish.
Well, Bob, the great thing about this race is that it brings back both friendships and rivalries. We certainly see one here today. Helio Castroneves, Paul Tracy, first time on the racetrack together since that time. Paul, I know you came out on the short end that day. Any payback today for Helio?
Nah, you know, Helio and I had some good rivalries in 02, 01. And today we're kind of like teammates on the same team with the same cars. So, you know, we're both looking for a good race.
Okay, and Helio, this man has been at this race twice before. This is his third start. You're first. You're a rookie here. You've got Indy 500 championships. How'd you like to add that Daytona 24-hour trophy to the cabinet?
I'm telling you, man, this thing is just amazing. I mean, as you see, Paul is here and among with incredible race car drivers, you know, and it's been pretty good. So, so far I'm enjoying it. He's trying to sell his house. I don't know if I should buy or not, so I'm kind of undecided on that idea.
All right, mate, best of luck. Well, certainly the number 60 car starting a little bit further back, Bob, than we expected. It was the fastest car in practice, but then in qualifying, there were issues.
No question about it. This was Oswaldo Negri, who found water on the racetrack. You see other cars going off, but it was Negri who got all the way to the tire wall. Heavy front-end damage, no qualifying time until the second round. They will start deep in the Daytona prototype field, but the car is ready to go. Now there is Tony Stewart back at the Rolex once again. He's fond of saying the Indianapolis Motor Speedway owes him a race. How about Daytona International Speedway and the Rolex 24? In 2004, in the final hour, the suspension broke. They tried to fix it with a 2x4 and sent out one of the best in the world, Tony Stewart, to try to win the race. But with 20 minutes to go, the suspension finally collapsed and put them in the wall. Tony Stewart is with Brian Till.
Thanks, Bob. You know, you talk about the rivalry between Castroneves and Tracy. I think there's a little rivalry between Tony Stewart and this racetrack, this event. I mean, you've come so close so many times, but you're on a roll. Your shoulder's better. Chili Bowl was good this year. You feeling like you're on a roll? You ready?
Yeah, we won 3 straight midget races in a row between a couple days before New Year's and the Chili Bowl in here. So everything's been good. We're feeling good. You know, the working out we've done has obviously helped us a ton, but you know, we've had a great off season. Been really busy with everything at home, and did not get any time off during the off season. But really excited about this year. And you know, drove the car about 8 laps yesterday in the Crawfords, and Andy Wallace and Butch did a great job of setting the car up. So it just makes it so easy. I mean, everybody goes, "How can you come here in 8 laps and be at pace?" And it's because it's a really good car, and I got really good co-drivers that get it set up before I even get here. So really excited about it, ready to go.
Well, he's come close before, Bob. Maybe this year will be the year.
Well, Tony Stewart has had success in everything. Stock cars, Indy cars, and Daytona prototypes, which is amazing considering the differences between the 3 types of race car. In case you're not familiar with them, here's a closer look.
The stock car uses a carbureted 5.7-liter pushrod V8 engine, turning over 9,000 RPM on gasoline. The Indy car uses overhead cams and fuel injection in its 3.5-liter V8 to reach over 10,000 RPM on ethanol, while the sports car is limited to 7,000 RPM for its injected gas-burning 5-liter overhead cam engine. The stock car produces nearly 800 horsepower. The Indy car cranks out about 650, and the sports car 500, despite being the only production-based engine of the 3. In terms of weight, the stock car tips the scales at 3,400 pounds. The Indy car, less than half that at 1,530, and the prototype somewhere in between, a minimum 2,250 pounds. The stock car's engine is cradled in the front of its tubular steel chassis, while both the IndyCar and the prototype place theirs behind the driver, bolted to a monocoque built mainly of carbon fiber. All three cars race on slick tires, but the Cup car is limited to 10-inch wide Goodyear rubber all around, while the IndyCar uses 10-inch Firestones at the front and 14.5 at the rear, and the sports car Hoosier rubber, 11.5 across the front and 13 inches in back. And unlike the oval trackers, the sports cars race rain or shine using treaded rain rubber when it's wet. In terms of ultimate speed, the IndyCar can reach 230 miles per hour to 200 for the stock car and 185 for the sports car, thanks mainly to its combination of weight, aerodynamics, and mechanical grip.
And there's a classic example of a Daytona prototype. In fact, that is last year's winning car, this year to be driven by defending champions Scott Dixon and Dan Weldon, joined this year by young Mexican Memo Rojas. And here's a look at what lies ahead. Last year's race winners drove the equivalent of New York to Los Angeles at an average of over 125 miles an hour, just 27 minutes in the pits, and over 22,000 individual gear shifts. That, my friends, is a long day's work. Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway. It's a beautiful day, fluffy clouds. As you see from the flags, we have a fairly strong breeze which will blow from the drivers right to left as they go down the long super stretch, the back stretch here at Daytona International Speedway. It has been fairly cold during the 2 days of practice and qualifying leading up to this race. And as a result, with temperatures around 70 today, the drivers will have a very different race car under them thanks to the changes in the weather and the track. Now let's get a look at our starting field with our Ruby Tuesday scoreboard featuring the Daytona Prototype Division at the top of your screen. While we do that, we'll hear from some more racing champions who have gathered to take on the challenge of the Rolex 24. Here's Chris Neville.
Dan Weldon won this race last year as a rookie. However, at that point in time, Dan, you were transitioning from Andretti Green over to the Ganassi IRL program. Did you have a chance to savor that win?
I think with the transition, I didn't enjoy it perhaps as much as I should. And obviously, I've got two races, so it would be nice to balance this one with another Rolex this year. But it's obviously going to be a lot tougher, I think, with more competition. But we'll look forward to it. Fans on speed, you got a lot to look forward to.
Well, he's teaming up with Scott Dixon and rookie Memo Rojas. Rojas will be teaming up with Pruitt for the rest of the season. More on that later.
All right, now let's join Brian Till.
Well, we talk about all the champions that are in the field this year. Well, you can't forget the 2006 Daytona Prototype champion, Jörg Bergmeister. But Jörg, very different ball game this year, different chassis. You're back with Porsche as a factory driver, so Porsche power plant. Does that change your approach at all, or is it just the same hard-nosed driving and going for the victory?
I mean, definitely. That's what I'm here for, is to try to win the race, and we have to keep our nose clean for, I would say, 24 hours, and it's going to come to the end where everyone keeps pushing really hard, and then's when you win the race.
Well, and that's what he's looking for. He desperately wants to win this race. He's won it overall before. He'd like yet another one. And we talk about the champions, Bob, he's definitely the tallest champion that was in the field.
And as you can tell from the sound, our air show is on the scene from Naval Air Base in Meridian, Mississippi. Time now to fire the engines, and for that, let's meet our Grand Marshal for the 45th Rolex 24 at Daytona. And for that, we go to the public address announcer here at Daytona.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome back the King, Richard Petty, for those most famous words in motorsports.
Drivers, start your engines.
And in case you're wondering, Richard Petty, the 7-time Nextel Cup champion, has a fairly glittering resume when it comes to road racing as well. Here's a look at your overall pole sitter, Alex Gurney, sharing with John Fogerty, Jimmy Vasser, and car owner Bob Stallings, who says he will only drive if necessary, but he is a very, very capable, an amateur national champion, in fact. And there's a look at the pole-sitting car in the production-based GT class. The Synergy Racing Porsche GT3 Cup, put on pole by 4-time Porsche Super Cup champion Patrick Heisman of Germany. Now, that car needed an engine change after qualifying, but under the Grand Am Rolex Sports Car Series rules, they are allowed to change the engine after qualifying and before the race if the event is 6 hours or longer. A nod to the tremendous mechanical challenge coming up over the next 24 hours. We'll have an hour of coverage following the start of the race here on Fox, and then we'll turn it over to Speed for the balance of our 15 hours of live coverage of the great race. Now, in addition to all the great champions you've already met, there are some drivers who dream big in lots of ways. Let's meet one of them now with Mike Johnson.
As a tight end for the New England Patriots and the Dallas Cowboys, Steve Johnson has shared the field with some of the greatest football players in the history of the sport. Steve, today, now you're actually sharing the racetrack with some of the greatest drivers from all fields of motorsport. Tell the fans at home what it's like to see a Castro Neves, a Jeff Gordon, or a Sam Hornish Jr. in your rearview mirror.
Well, first of all, I'll let you know what tough company you're in, but also it's very comforting in knowing that they certainly know what they're doing, as everyone out here does. This is a great crowd. Best drivers in the world are here, and we're looking forward to getting started.
How do you relate the team aspect of auto racing versus the team aspect of football?
Very similar, preparation, dedication, but the difference, I think, in football is you do it one play at a time. You're in the moment for 5, 6, 7 seconds at a time, but when you're behind the wheel here, you're in the moment for an hour or 2 hours at a time, so it's very different from a mental aspect.
Well, last year, Steve Johnson and his co-drivers finished 4th at the 24 Hours of Daytona, their best finish. This year, though, they're going to start from the pole.
All right, thanks very much. There you see the field on its way to begin pace laps in front of a huge crowd on the infield at Daytona International Speedway. A year ago, the Grand Marshal of this event was our friend and colleague Benny Parsons, who passed away a little over a week ago due to complications of cancer. He was a great racer, a great man, and we miss him very much. Welcome back to Daytona. It's sweaty palm time. All of the tens of thousands of man-hours in preparation for one of the world's greatest sports car events is about to turn into action on the racetrack. For the money, for the watch, for the prestige of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Welcome back live to Daytona International Speedway and the Rolex 24, the first of our Speed on Fox broadcasts for 2007. The cars are on track. We're moments away from the green flag, so let's take this opportunity for a closer look at this combined oval and infield road course, 3.56 miles around. We'll see it at its most exciting time, under the lights, with former champion Scott Pruitt behind the wheel.
Now, this is the coolest part of the track. You're running from about 190 miles an hour all the way to first gear, hard on the brakes. It's a great turn right in the middle, then clear up to the right up to the inside of the curb. Bring it back out slightly. This is flat out through here. Second gear, third gear, all the way up to fourth. Just in fourth for a second. Back down to first, right up on the curb, and use all the track on exit. Second gear, third gear, fourth gear. Now we're coming up on the kink. Turn 4, flat out, don't lift, use up all the track. Let the car just straighten out, hard on the brakes. All the way down to first, use all the track right up to the curb. Hard on the gas right here. You got to be careful. The car will try to be getting away from you. A little bit of wheel spin. Second, third. Again, hard on the brakes. Real critical turn here. You want to be in the middle of the track is what brings you up onto the bank. I like to bring it right up to the wall and then just kind of bring the car right back to the middle. The front will be touching a bit. You hear it scraping, kind of up to fifth. And at nighttime, you're really critical using these braking points. You see them on the wall right there. 4, 3, 2. Quick jog to the left, back to the right, middle of the track. Ooh, a little traffic there. Hard on the gas, back up onto the bank. And at this point, you're looking for anything you can tow. Anything where you can pick up a little bit of a draft, whether it's a GT car or a prototype. You'll pick up probably 2 or 3 miles an hour here. And here it is. You're just continuing to accelerate here. About 175, going up onto 180. We have these flashing lights here, kind of warn traffic that we're coming. And then back down to first, and that's a lap at Daytona.
All right, with that, it's time to go racing. So let's go right to our announce position and join my booth colleagues for the next 24 hours. Lee Diffie, Dorsey Schrader, and David Hobbs.
Hello, Bob, and hello, everyone. Welcome to this extraordinary event, and it's more than just a race. It has become an event, hasn't it? And we're really looking forward to this one. It's the first part of a 14-round championship. This carries a lot of weight with it for this individual event, but also for the entire championship. It's exciting times here at the World Centre of Racing. We're very pumped about it. The motor racing fraternity's pumped about it. We have got the best drivers in the world all on the track right now. It's 2 races on the track at the one time, 2 classes, Daytona prototypes and GT. There's a maximum of 5 drivers in each car, and we have got so many stories to tell. We're coming to green in what is truly, as you've seen over the past 30 minutes, a star-studded field. The Pontiac safety car pulls off, and we are ready to roll. The Rolex 24 at Daytona is underway, and Alex Gurney takes the flag.
Boy, oh boy, now watch it, boys. You've got 24 hours here. Don't let's have too much racy stuff here. This turn 1 is a tricky one, can catch a lot of people out. Caught out Oswaldo Negre in qualifying on his opening lap. So far threading their way through. Then there's going to be a small gap, then the GT cars will follow.
The general consensus was that Max Angelelli and the SunTrust Pontiac Riley would pounce on Gurney. That's not the case. He holds the lead well over Angelelli. Then back to Mark Goosens, running third, and a solid third at that. And now here's our GT class. We told you the brief story earlier with the Synergy Porsche and Patrick Huysman, who had his troubles, but he gets away cleanly. He's being swamped though. And the Speed Source Mazda RX-8 in there nicely.
That was pretty close there, right on each other as they go into this pretty tight corner coming out. Of course, they speed up a lot, and there's that little left-hand jink that Scott Brewer was telling us about a moment ago.
Oh,
very fast down to the internet. Oh, he's going to go through. He's going to take somebody else with him. Now, that is not the way to start a 24-hour race. How incredibly disappointing for the guy following.
Nothing.
This guy here, I mean, nothing he could do. Absolutely no way to go. Nothing he could do. That's the 28 car.
It's the At-Speed Motorsports Porsche.
That is a shame. On the first lap, he had nowhere to go.
God, how disastrous. And he's got to go all the way around before he can fix that tyre.
86 Porsche in strife. That was the car that was spinning. Larry Bowman, Farnbacher Lowell's Porsche.
Good team, that too. All good cars.
Oh, another one.
He's been hit twice.
Oh, that's going to cause more schmozzle there as they all pack up concertina fashion. All got away with that one.
So a very eventful start for Ian Bass, who is a former GT class winner here at the Rolex 24. Let's take a look at the first spin, and it was Ian Bass. Look up ahead.
Oh, he just goes wide there. I don't think anybody calls it. This is the 07 car. We're on board, one of the Banner Racing cars.
But that was a catchable spin. He went off the road. He could have lifted off the gas, kept the wheels straight, and not had to spin across the
Could have just driven down the grass.
Yeah, it's flat out there. You could have gone straight.
Yeah.
So Ian Bass and Sean Price in trouble from the get-go, but let's get back to the front of the field. And Alex Gurney leads the way. Look at Angelelli close the margin.
I am very surprised Angelelli didn't pounce at the start. We all thought that he would. And you heard Alex Gurney say he didn't necessarily feel he had to lead a lap. He wanted to be conservative and not hurt the car. That's smart.
They all say that. You used to say that.
Star drivers in these first 3 cars. They've got the road race specialists. In the lead car, you'll see Jimmy Vasser in that a little later on. In this second car, the SunTrust Pontiac Riley, Jeff Gordon will be in that car. The Lowe's Riley. We'll have Jimmy Johnson behind the wheel a little later in this race. And we can keep on going like that through the field as we climb on board the Ruby Tuesday Porsche Crawford.
Patrick Long driving right now as he heads toward the bus stop on the back straightaway. Hard braking down a couple gears, and you flick right through here. We'll see trouble here tonight as this gets very sandy when cars go off.
Well, people keep going over those yellow curbs there, putting the wheel into the sand and throw it all up on the track.
On board the 01. Ganassi, Lexus, Riley for Telmex Chip Ganassi Racing. And Scott Pruitt, a former champion who would dearly love to win this Rolex 24 for Chip Ganassi. He's done it before in other cars and other teams, but would really like to do it here now.
And you could hear on the banking that skipping he was talking about on his lap that he took us around for the track map. The bottom of the car is hitting on the asphalt right now because it's full of fuel. It's at its heaviest weight right now.
And that's obviously one of those compromises you've got to make with these aerodynamic cars. You want them to run low, you want them to run stiff, keep the airflow constant over the car, but as they get heavy, as you say, especially on that banking, which develops a lot of G-force into the ground. They do just kiss the ground. Obviously, you've got to get it just right.
Here is a man making the transition. Well, at the moment, while sitting in a sports car, he's transitioning from Champ Car World Series to NASCAR Nextel Cup. That is A.J. Allmendinger, and he's chasing down Scott Dixon. He's made up a lot of ground and is looking racy right from the start in the Mike Shank Racing Lexus. He finished on the podium last year. He's got a taste of it, but he wants more. He drove with his Champ Car World Series teammate last year in Justin Wilson. He's doing the same again in 2007 with Paul Tracy alongside him. As the Daytona prototypes stretched their legs, there was a common thread of thought that there may have been trouble on the opening laps, but the Daytona prototypes have kept their nose clean.
I'm in the sister car now, the 6 car this year, and it was just, I think, one of the most fun races I've ever been a part of, and because of that, I just wanted to come back and be a part of it again. But as I said, when you're that close, it just kind of gets those juices flowing to come back and get one step closer.
One of America's most exciting young drivers at the moment. He shares this ride with Ian James and Henry Zogabe, along with Paul Tracy, and he's really applying the pressure to Dixon.
Absolutely. Now, these cars are very aerodynamic, as we said, and of course they're very dependent on downforce. If they get too close, it makes life a little bit difficult for them. They've got to be very careful when they're overtaking people. Right behind him, the 23 car, the Ruby Tuesday Porsche Crawford.
Brian, what do you have?
Guys just checked in with Alex Jobe of the Ruby Tuesday Championship Racing Team. Patrick Long behind the wheel of that car, as you guys said, but he's got a problem already, an alternator issue. I talked to Alex. He said they're going to need to change it. And really, the sooner they come to pit lane and get that change, the better off they're going to be. If they continue to wait, the further he's going to drop back.
Now, this team last year had many alternator issues during the course of that year. Now, they're totally electronically run cars, including the engine. They use more than 12 volts of electricity to use those systems that they need to run. Now, the alternator keeps the battery charged. With that not working, the battery will deplete its energy very quickly. That's why they need to come in right now.
One of the big movers in the field up the front is Scott Pruitt. He's come from 12th up to 8th. Dixon's moved from 8th up to 5th. Meanwhile, the pressure is on at the front as the Daytona prototypes start to come in amongst the GT class cars. It is on, and Gurney gets a little sideways. Here comes Max the Axe. Angelelli is putting the pressure on for the lead.
Works to the high line. That will give him more top end when he comes off of NASCAR turn 4 up ahead here.
And look at that car moving around. Those are the bumps that Montoya was talking about. He wants to learn about in this race so he can apply those in the Daytona 500. You can see that car of Alex Gurney bumping around there as he's going through turns 3 and 4 on the NASCAR track. Here goes Angelelli down the inside.
First pass for the lead, and Mark Goosens goes with him. So Gurney goes from 1st to 3rd in the one move. And Angelelli is our new race leader. Gurney said earlier today it's not important early to lead. Well, that's not the mindset of Angelelli. He loves being up front, and that's where he is in the SunTrust Riley. Out in front, will he hand the car in the lead to Jeff Gordon? We'll find out. Back at the Rolex 24 at Daytona, and the one-time race-leading car, the Gainsco. Stallings Riley of Alex Gurney is in trouble. There was an incident coming off NASCAR turn 4, and Alex has slowed dramatically. It involved the GT car, 42 of Team Salem, Michael Oriema behind the wheel, and now Gurney is limping back to pit road.
Damage to the right front wheel, damage to the right front body, and you have to suspect with the wheel being that bad, this is the Porsche that had the crash in turn 4.
There's a bit of high-tech work going on that hood. Just must have come undone on the banking there, flicked up. Obviously slowed up, and Gurney ran into him. Very, very disappointing for Alex Gurney.
Well, let's take a look at a replay. And this is what it looked like for Alex Gurney. He's up high. Michael Oriema is center of the track. He drifts wide, and Alex has nowhere to go. And there's the contact.
He could absolutely not see it all out of that Porsche.
The Daytona prototype sweeping through. A.J. Allmendinger led that charge. Now, this is a separate incident down in turn 1 involving car 22.
Boy, 22's had a pretty checkered career in this race so far. That's the second time we've seen him at the side of the road.
Back to Alex Gurney.
Oh. Now the bad news is with that wheel being bent, you have to assume that the front suspension on the tie rod's going to probably take a hit too.
It can't be right, can it?
Now this is Michael Oriema, the team sailing car. Back on pit road, needing that much attention. You have to feel for him. He couldn't see where he was going coming out of NASCAR Turn 4. As we go back to our race-leading car, Max Angelelli being chased by Mark Goosens. Now the interesting story here is that during the off-season, a switch of team ownership as far as the SunTrust car, and look at this damage.
At this now. The whole thing coming unraveled, not only the tyre, but the whole race has completely ruined that nose, and as Dorsey has said, it's bound to have damaged that suspension. It'd be a miracle if it hasn't.
All this in the first 5 laps of the race.
Well, of course, unfortunately, it caught him out too, coming out of NASCAR 4. If he'd just been a bit lower on the track when that happened, he could have dived in straight away instead of just had to do a whole lap, which has done a lot of damage to that car.
Well, Gainsco Insurance have about 100 VIPs here this weekend. They were thrilled when Alex put this car on the pole position, and now they will be gutted. They will be devastated. And race leaders sweeping by already. This is costly. Calvin's on the spot.
There's Goose.
Well, as you can imagine, Lee, a lot of damage here to the right front corner, and the key for Alex Gurney was driving this car slowly enough back to the pit lane to not induce further damage to the suspension. Mechanics are going to work here. The rear end is being serviced in terms of tires and fuel, and right now the mechanic is trying to evaluate if there is any further suspension damage to it. Initially they thought toe link, which is the link connecting the steering wheel, the steering rack, to the wheel as it turns through the corner. Right now there's a wheel going back on here, so maybe the mechanic feels right now there is no suspension damage. These noses, if the brackets are not broken, can be changed relatively quickly. Very expensive part of the car, but something that the teams are easily set up for. They'll typically carry about 3 or 4 spare noses for a 24-hour race, because this is not an uncommon occurrence. But right now, underneath, once that nose is off, I see one of the cooling vents has been torn, and the mechanics are making a little bit further investigation here to see if there is anything wrong. It's a long race. You're better to spend a few more seconds here in pit lane before sending the driver back on the racetrack with a car that is unsafe, or might have a further problem.
Around about the 2-hour mark this time last year, this 99 Riley was involved in an accident as well. However, sadly, this time it has come a whole lot earlier. Now, problems too for this Porsche, the True Speed Porsche. Robert and Charles Morgan, Timo Bernard, the Porsche expert, started this car. Chris, you're on the spot. We might get some feedback on that a little later as we go on board with David Donahue in the Red Bull Porsche-powered Riley. And when we come back, we'll talk to the king. Yes, Richard Petty is with us when we come back.
The Rolex 24 at Daytona is brought to you by Lexus and their pursuit of perfection.
Race leading car, the SunTrust Pontiac Riley, Max Angelelli behind the wheel, former series champion, former 24 winner, and would like to do it again. He's got Jeff Gordon, Jan Magnussen, and the new team owner, as far as and its team naming rights, with Wayne Taylor Racing now. But of course, their blue chip sponsor in SunTrust on board going forward, and there's a lot of excitement in this team for the 2007 season. And Max leads. He leads well over Mark Goosens in the Lowe's Riley Matthews car. And of course, Bill Riley of Riley Technologies, who was heavily involved in the SunTrust car, is now involved with Jim Matthews in this Lowe's machine. So close connections in the front 2 cars, and they're dominating this field. Scott Pruitt has shown some good pace. AJ Allmendinger, possibly the quickest, who's moved right up to 4th spot at the moment, behind David Donahue in the Brumos Porsche, and Patrick Carpentier. Patrick Long in the 23 Ruby Tuesday car has settled, and he sits in a solid 7th from Orbelin Dixon and Max Pappas. We take this time to welcome our special guest to the Speed on Fox booth in the King, Richard Petty. Richard, you're the Grand Marshal here this weekend. I know you enjoyed that honour. What do you think about this field?
Yeah, it's a heck of a field. It's probably the best field they've ever had. Of course, you hear that all the time, but it's a kind of deal that is kind of different for me. I'm usually seeing everybody all in one place, and here you got different kinds of cars, and you turn some of them loose in one time and some another, and I'm taking it all in right now, that's for sure.
For our viewers, they immediately think of you and relate to you with NASCAR, but you did pretty good on some road course races as well.
Yeah, we got lucky to stay on some road courses and won a couple of them over a period of time, but that was the problem I had. I was a little more over aggressive, and you know, I feel sorry for these guys. This is a 24-hour run, and then you get knocked out in the first 5 minutes, and you know, they've been working 6 months just to come here. They've done all the testing, and it's just it's a heartbreak from that standpoint. But I've been there and done that, so I know what they're feeling now.
Well, Richard, I got to tell you, one of the highlights of my racing career was your final year in NASCAR racing here at Daytona 500. We raced against one another, and I got the privilege of riding around with you on the back of the Pontiac convertible as you had the last farewell to the fans, and man, it was awesome.
Well, it was awesome for us. I mean, you know, after doing 30, 35 years, whatever we've done, and you know, have people appreciate really what you've done. I mean, I appreciated it because it got me where I was at, but to have the fans and stuff get so enthused with it, and they got all excited. I didn't know whether they got excited because I was leaving or you know what, but anyhow, it was just a great year and a great career from our standpoint.
You know, speaking of fans, this is the most fans I've ever seen. I've been coming to these 24 hours for 30-some-odd years now, and this is the largest field of fans I think I've ever seen, particularly that infield.
I was very impressed. You know, you see it on TV, and it's so big down here at Daytona. It's hard to see all these people at one given time, but I told somebody, I said, if they took everybody out of the pits and out of the different deals around in the corners, instead of put them in a grandstand, you'd have a pretty good crowd of people.
That's the difference, really. The grandstands, the road racing crowd doesn't want to go in the grandstands because they can get down there where the drivers are and mill around down in the infield, so they all pack to that infield party is what they do.
Not only that, but they go out on the course itself. They pick out the number 3 corner, number 8 corner, whatever it is, because that's their favorite place, so they go out and camp out there. So it's just a big tailgate party, the way I look at it. These guys, and they'll just keep moving around. So you see one guy in the corner for 15 minutes, and then you go to another corner, he's then moved to another place. So it's a very transit crowd that moves around.
Well, Richard, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. It's great to see you. Thank you for being the Grand Marshal for the Rolex 24. We hope you can stick around for a little bit and watch the race.
I appreciate Rolex inviting me down here, and we're really enjoying it, okay?
There he is, the king, Richard Petty. Let's get back down pit road and an update on the 99. Calvin?
Lee, I just checked in with the mechanic on the Gainesville crew, surveyed the damage on the front corner there, and he said everything looked okay. However, Alex Gurney has said over the radio that there is some kind of issue with the car, not really pointing in a straight line. The hose that you saw tore off is not a major issue. What that hose does is direct air to the helmet cooler. The helmets are cooled via this air and an intercooler, so they said the intercooler should take over. He should be okay. Quick update on the number 16 car, the 1997 winner here at Daytona. Rob Dyson had a moment out on the racetrack, flat spotted the tires, and he had to come in and change all 4. Let's go down to Brian.
Thanks, Calvin. More on the 23. Patrick Long now reporting power steering problems intermittently in and out. It works sometimes it doesn't. And it's related to the alternator problem that we reported earlier. Dorsey, as you pointed out, as that alternator begins to fail, it doesn't charge the batteries. What you end up with is the electronics beginning to fail. That's what's happening to the 23. They want a full course caution so they can dive to pit lane and begin to work on it.
And of course, this car has electronic power steering. It's run by an electrical pump, which is now failing.
People say, how can these things go wrong on these race cars so soon into race? And my answer is, I have no idea.
That's one of the things about sports car racing, and this is the Super Bowl of sports car racing, the Rolex 24. Coming February 18th, the world's best drivers return to Fox to go door-to-door to see who will take home the checkered flag in the 49th running of the Great American Race. Beginning February 18th, Fox Sports is the exclusive home of the Daytona 500. Let's get back to the action on track here at the Rolex 24. And yes, sadly, Alex Gurney and the Gaines Co-Insurance, Bob Stallings racing car, is back on pit lane. Cal?
Well, this is a major issue here. The left half shaft, Lee, basically gives it drive to the rear of the car, has gone. I just spoke to Carl Brown and the engineer. He said, head in his hands, just disappointed. He said, this is not a quick fix, 20 minutes or so. I do not believe that any team here this year with the competitiveness of this field can recover from something like this. Last year we saw the Ganassi team win with 3 laps in the pits. I don't think it's going to happen this year. The field is just too deep.
Now, last year we had a lot of half-shaft problems, or, you know, in the United States we call them an axle. A lot of axle problems because of the banking. These cars normally don't run on a banked track, and the angularity of that axle gets so extreme that it wears out this constant velocity.
Universal joint, yeah, it goes away. But as we're saying about the field here, you know, there's not going to be another race this year, the Daytona 500, the Indy 500, even Formula One, that's going to have a field with the depth of driving ability that we've got here today. It is absolutely extraordinary.
You'll see at the top of your screen, and you may remember we mentioned earlier that there are 2 races going on at the same time, 2 different classes. The Daytona prototypes are highlighted in the blue numbers, and then they'll switch to yellow, and that highlights the GT classes. We climb on board the Red Bull Porsche Riley. David Donahue, currently 3rd place. He's only 1.8 seconds out of the lead, and there is a lot of high hopes down there in Brumos land that this could be the year.
Ooh, catching up with that car, that 46 Corvette at a difficult point right into that chicane, losing quite a bit of speed through there. The prototype being much quicker through there than the GT car, but so he lost a little bit there. He's going the low side here.
From David Donahue to Scott Pruitt.
And did you see the car in front of Scott Pruitt drop the wheel into the ditch like we were talking about, David?
Yep.
That digs out a big old hole.
That sand and stuff comes on the track.
Plus, I was driving one time, and it took out a piece of the asphalt and came up and blew right through the windshield in my face. So, not good.
That is senior clag as opposed to just clag, is it, when it comes to the windshield?
Yes, that's not good.
Whoa, going by the 11 car
That's
there.
Pruitt rounding up Patrick Carpentier. That was for position. Now Pruitt has moved into the top 5 after starting 12th, and we're only 15 laps into this race. Pruitt.
Oh, there goes.
Oh, Carpentier, nice move. He's read that beautifully.
Very
wow.
good. Pruitt got hung up looking at the car in front of him that he was trying to find a way around, and that's all Patrick wanted.
It didn't take Patrick Carpentier long to suss that one out.
Well, one of the unlucky stories, and it is quite devastating for this team. It involves Bob Stallings' Gainsco insurance car of Alex Gurney, and Calvin's on the spot.
Well, Alex is stuck here in pit lane. Alex, what was the problem on the racetrack with the Porsche 42?
Well, basically, you know, I was coming up behind him, and it looked like the hood on his car flipped up, so I'm guessing he couldn't see anything. You know, he hit the brakes when we're at max speed. He hit him hard, and I was right behind him. So I tried to move out of the way, move to the left, and I thought I was clear, and then he moved to the left. I looked at my mirror on my left side, and I had another car there, and, you know, that was it. I ran into him, or he, you know, we had side-to-side contact there, and I'm not sure what I would have done differently, just unlucky.
As he said, just a very tough break. He tried to play it clean. This team said they won practice last year. They wanted to win a race this year. And so far, things not looking good as they start their 2007 campaign, Lee.
Now, while Calvin was talking to Alex, the 24 Matt Connolly Motorsports car has run into trouble. That's outside turn 1. Let's take a look from an onboard view of the 07 Banner Racing Pontiac as to what occurred.
Whoa!
Whee, that's what occurred. And Paul Edwards takes a look around and says, what's going on?
Why did you run into me like that for?
Mark Montgomery was on board that 24 BMW M3. There's Mark. He's stranded after contacting
Oh, that could bring a caution out
Paul
if he's stuck
Edwards.
there.
So, the GM factory driver is back on his way in this new car, which we'll tell you more about when we come back to the Rolex 24 here at Daytona.
The Rolex 24 at Daytona is brought to you by Rolex, a crown for every achievement. And by Ruby Tuesday, simple, fresh American dining from start to finish.
Welcome back, everyone. If you've just joined us, welcome back to an historic event with an extraordinary driver lineup. Lee Diffie, David Hobbs, Dorsey Schrader with you here in the Speed on Fox booth. Calvin Fish, Brian Till, Chris Neville, and Mike Johnson all working pit road. And we've already had quite an exciting start. Many changes of positions. Max Angelelli is the outright leader and Daytona prototype class leader. While this man here in the 74, Wolf Hensler for Taffel Racing, is out in front of the GT class ahead of Dirk Werner. And he's doing it well at the moment. Mike, what do you have?
Well, since this drop of the green flag, that 74 Tafel racing car has really just taken off. They have built up to about a 13-second lead. I asked team manager Tony Dow, I said, is this everything to plan? Did you expect to go this fast? He kind of came back to me and said, no, we expected to be 50 seconds in the lead by now, but they are going to start playing it a little bit more conservatively soon. The interesting thing about that car is that's actually one of the 2006 cars, and we've already seen engine problems with the pole sitter on the 2007. So keep your eyes on those 2006 chassis because they have the smaller motor than what the new ones have for this year.
Yeah, some of the Porsche teams weren't quite ready to make that jump to the 2007 cars. There's around about 10 of those new 2007 Porsche GT3 cars built specifically to the Grand American Road Racing rules for the GT class moving forward. But the majority of the cars, there's something like 24 Porsches out there. The majority of them are 2006 versions. Sylvain Tremblay from Speed Source Racing is sitting third in the GT class in car 70 in the Mazda RX-8, so he'll be thrilled with that. They have done a bunch of testing in those RX-8s, and they'll be pleased to be in the top 3. Wayne Taylor, and something's grabbed his attention, something's wrong. Whoa. We'll get to it when we come back. And Speed's coverage of NASCAR returns when it all begins, when the best drivers in the world go bumper to bumper in prime time to see who'll take out the first checkered flag of the year, the Budweiser Shootout. Our NASCAR coverage begins Saturday, February 10th at 8 p.m. 5 Eastern. 5 Pacific, I should say, right here on Fox. We're back at it, and we're back in the lead with Max Angelelli, who is being hounded by Mark Goossens. It is really on at the front. Calvin.
Well, moments ago we saw Wayne Taylor sitting on the pit box, and suddenly he was alerted via radio that something was up. I just checked in with Simon Hodgson, who's the new team manager here. Remember, Wayne Taylor and this whole team have moved across under his own umbrella this year with the SunTrust sponsorship from the Riley team. And Wayne was told that Angelelli wants to get out during this pit stop. The team have not been told by Max why he wants out, but he said, I want to do a driver change in this stop. Now, typically when you've got 3 or 4 drivers on your roster, the 3rd and 4th driver in your lineup will be back in a motorhome resting, getting ready for their stint. But typically you will always have your next driver in the rotation sitting there and ready. And that's exactly what Wayne Taylor was doing there, certainly monitoring the situation, but being ready as a driver as well to be ready for when Max Angelelli comes in. Also, they'll be doing a suspension change. They got a little bit of an issue with the rear end. It's going loose on them. In fact, they're going to change the rear gurney wicker, which is the little piece of extra downforce they can add to the rear wing to plant the rear end of the car to make the car a little bit better on a full stint of fuel.
Well, that's a very strange request by a driver, particularly somebody like Max Angelelli. Normally you would double stint. Being that, it takes longer to do the driver change. Particularly this year, they've made the fuel flow faster yet, so the pit stops are quicker than they used to be. Now that indicates to me that there's something wrong with Max Angelelli. Maybe he's got some cramping in his leg or something like that. It's quite uncharacteristic.
It's not like him at all.
No, it's not.
Because he is one tough nut.
But you get those cramps in your leg or whatever, and you better take care of it now because it won't go away.
So Goossens has to play catch-up again in the lows. Riley Matthews' car sits second. Pontiac powered. Both these cars up front are identical in terms of power plant and chassis configuration. Look at this. This is for the lead of this race. We're now some 21 laps in, and such a long way to go.
Oh, that BMW.
And look at that. Oh, Goossens is undecided. Which way to go?
Oh, and he chops across the nose.
And that's the 24 Matt Conley Motorsports car.
He's already been in trouble once.
Yeah. Wow, it's so difficult. You know, when you're driving these slower cars, you've got to have eyes in the back of your head as well, and it's not just that easy to just move out of the way, especially when both of them are coming at you from both sides.
That's one of the exciting elements, one of the exciting attributes of sports car racing is the closing rate. The speed closing rate between the different classes, and you saw it right there. As we take a look at today's forecast, fingers crossed, and of course what we are watching with interest is that there is a chance of rain overnight.
80%. That's a huge
chance of rain. That's not a chance of rain. That's almost a dead cert.
Well, it's going to rain 80% of the night.
When we come back early in the morning and there's a glistening track, boy, does it provide some entertainment.
It also creates its own unique set of problems from the standpoint of driving. I mean, driving around here is not that bad, but windshield wipers have to work. The foggers on the windshield have to work. There's a lot that goes on.
That's the problem. When it gets cold at night and the inside of the car, of course, is incredibly hot. So that's a real absolute catalyst to miss the thing up, and it's very difficult to get rid of it.
We have run caution-free for the opening 22 laps of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. And here he is, Max the Axe Angelelli, your race leader. This is one of the biggest movers in the field, if not the biggest mover. Bill Auberlen, a 2-times GT champion here in the Rolex Sports Car Series, started down in 21st position after some qualifying dramas early on day one. Well, the California guy is flying. He is sitting 6th at the moment in the Siegel Sport BMW. And Auberlen is just thrilled to be in a Daytona prototype. He spent a lot of time in GT cars, but he said there is nothing like being in the prototype class up against the best drivers in the world and showing them what I can do.
And he is no doubt one of our best American drivers. I mean, he wins no matter what you put him in. And qualifying was messed up a little bit because of some moisture that seeped up here in turn 1. We had a lot of cars go off the track, so some faster cars had to start at the back, this being one thereof.
Some infringement. I think this car ran a little light through tech at the end of regular qualifying. It had to go out again, but the team weren't too perturbed. And Bill Auberlen has done a stunning job thus far. He's raced in open-top prototypes before, and he's done the occasional race here and there in these Daytona prototypes, but he's got hold of this for the entire season, and he's making the most of it. Here's the TRG 66 Porsche, no headlights. What's going on there?
Well, they're going to have to fix that problem, that's for sure, before it could start.
This is the famous 66 that Kevin Buckler and his men made famous several years ago when it won the race outright. Mike Johnson, you got more on this?
Yeah, well, the 66 is definitely one of the early favorites, but right now they're missing 2 headlights. Right here in my hand is one of the Porsche headlight assemblies. This is off the 997. It basically just slides right into the car, and the wires plug right here in the back. Now, on the bottom here is a little lever that the teams can adjust, and that's what tightens it down. Now, fortunately, right now, they hope they can actually just stick a screwdriver in there and put it back together, but if there's any damage in that entire assembly, they might have to spend a little bit more time working on it because they have to have lights once it gets dark here. Back to you.
And the old boy that owns the team, Kevin Buckler, is back behind the wheel again in that number 66.
He said that the boys convinced him. He wasn't 100% sure on whether he wanted to drive. He'd been doing quite a bit of training. There's one of the headlight assemblies.
That's a spare.
And he said he did a bit of physical training, got back in and turned some reasonable lap times. So he allowed his guys to convince him to get back behind the wheel, and I think he's quite excited. They've got a total of 5 GT cars running here this weekend in the Rolex, and they had several cars running in yesterday's Coney Challenge Series also. So the Californian-based team, the Racers Group, TRG as we now call it, very busy this weekend, and that's reigning GT champion Andy Lally behind the wheel. Now, we just want to remind all of you that at the bottom of the hour, so in about 15 minutes' time, we'll be sending our viewers on the Fox network back to regular programming. That's in about 15 minutes. Those of you who want to continue watching the race, you can switch to Speed for continued coverage. So we'll be with you here, Speed on Fox, for about another 15 minutes. And here is Andy Lally, who had a stunning season last year. He and Mark Bunting, who have now parted ways. Mark's got a different deal going, and Andy Lally and Bunting now become competitors as opposed to teammates. Back up front, the SunTrust Pontiac-powered Riley.
Max Angelelli, it's going to be it'd be interesting to see what is going on there while he is requested to get out of the car at the end of the first stint. That should be coming up when fuel load runs out very shortly. Diversity of power plants and chassis, one of the real highlights of the Rolex Sports Car Series, and this is the 20, the Pontiac-powered Crawford with Andy Wallace, Butch Leitzinger, and 2-time NASCAR Nextel Cup champion Tony Stewart. It's an awesome threesome. How will they fare? We'll find out. Back at the Rolex 24, coverage continuing. Speed on Fox. This is Shane Lewis for the Southern Motorsports. BMW-powered Riley, yet a different combination again. It's being chased by a Lexus Riley and young Mark Wilkins from Canada, who is stepping up considerably this year into a big-time Daytona prototype program.
He does not have a whole lot of racing experience, although over the past 3 or 4 years, he's really built up his resume, and this is the biggest moment of his career to be in a full-time Daytona prototype program.
Now, interestingly enough, this 3 car was completely destroyed in the preseason testing here. We actually had a garage cam as we watched whether or not this team should be able to rebuild this car and get it to this Daytona racetrack. It was an awesome job that they did do.
We just showed you some NASCAR and open wheel notables there where they are respectively placed in this field. Speaking of a guy who's got a huge open wheeler future ahead of him, he's standing by with Calvin.
Well, Graham Rahal certainly has a very bright future ahead of him, Lee. We know he ran here last year with the Tafel Racing Team in GT, but since that time, Graham, you've got so much experience in various forms of racing. In fact, you're driving a champ car this week, looking to maybe get a full-time ride this year. What do you love about Daytona? I know your dad had a great history here, Bobby Rahal, winning the race back in '81. What do you like about it?
Well, I mean, it's a great track, great time to be here. And really, you know, to win the 24 is a great honor, so I just want to kind of follow in his footsteps and hopefully win the thing one of these days.
One of the neat things about this race is the diverse experience and age. Here is Graham's much younger driving partner here, Elliott Forbes-Robinson. Just teasing you, mate. I know you're getting a little bit up there in years, but talk about the fact you've won this race twice. What can you share with a young driver like Graham as a teammate here this weekend?
Well, it's just a matter of this race is getting to the finish. You know, he's fast enough. He's a great driver. But this race is so tough to get to the finish. It's got to keep in your mind. You know, when I started racing, I drove for the Atlantic, and young Rahal started when I was driving. Unfortunately, that was his dad 30 years ago.
Well, it says a lot about your own career, mate, that you're still here. Well done.
Well, thank you very much.
And it's wonderful to have Elliott Forbes-Robinson in this field this year. It was a late call-up for EFR, as Shane Lewis is really in the thick of it with the RVO Motorsports Pontiac Riley. That's the ex-Adrian Fernandez car, incidentally, right there. The orange and blue number 12 as we climb back on board with Patrick Long in the Ruby Tuesday 23. He's working his way through traffic, which is one of the challenges. It's not necessarily how fast, how quick you are in this race. It's what you don't do, not making any mistakes.
I'm really surprised with that alternator problem that this car has not stopped to fix it yet. So maybe they found a switch in there somewhere to get the problem taken care of. Ooh, almost bumped there.
David Donahue, the Red Bull Brumos Porsche, Riley chassis, as they build their experience with the new chassis, and by the way, they love it.
That is Mark Gooson's second place car right out the windscreen there. So this is a battle for second place overall.
Into turn 1. Drop down off the tri-oval, and the pressure is on. One of the foundation drivers in the Daytona prototype era, David Donahue. He was here right from day one. He did some of the initial testing. And look at that, there's nothing between these guys. Both Riley chassis cars, but one is powered by Porsche, the other by Pontiac. It is on. They have had their share of troubles over the years at the Speedway. Is today going to be Brumos's day? They've got such a storied past, and we'll detail that over our 15 hours of coverage.
The Rolex 24 at Daytona is powered by Pontiac and the 260 horsepower Solstice GXP.
The weather has been on our side for this fabulous annual event, the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Race leader to the tune of some 7 seconds is Max Angelelli as we climb on board with him with a windshield tear-off caught there. That's what's flapping on the right-hand side of your screen. Meanwhile, back was the battle between Mark Goosens and David Donahue for second. A.J. Armendinger is fourth, and Scott Pruitt, former series champion and race winner, is in the top 5. Back to pit road.
Yeah, we're starting to see some GT pit stops right now. No driver change on the 72. Robert Liddell brings it in. Just a quick load of fuel, 4 fresh Hoosier tires, and they'll be back on the track. They said the car's working real good right now. They're just taking their time. 3 different cars with 3 different strategies. This one's doing great. Back to you guys.
The Scottish driver Robin Liddell, he has won GT here at the Rolex. Yes, he has one of those fabulous wristwatches, and that was the 70 Speed Source RX-8 Mazda. Down on pit road for its first stop, although it seems to be somewhat prolonged. Here's our race leader, Max Angelelli. He has caught Shane Lewis in the Southern Motorsports BMW. Does he get a clean passage through? Yes, he does. Calvin.
On the number 6 car driven by AJ Allmendinger, they had a tremendous charge here in the first hour. This is a routine stop. Fresh Hoosier tires. He stalls it momentarily. This should not be a big issue. You are allowed to push start these cars in pit lane. AJ Allmendinger back underway with fresh rubber. Big burnout. He's on a charge here, even though this is a 24-hour event. He wants to get to the front. His teammate Paul Tracy did it last year in the early going.
So the open wheel, now come NASCAR star, is doing his sports car stint, and he has shown some great speed early on today. We'd like to say thanks again for joining us on Fox for the kickoff of the 2007 Rolex 24 at Daytona. Viewers of the Fox network will resume regular programming, but to continue following the race to its conclusion, switch over to Speed, where we'll have an additional 13.5 hours of coverage. There is still so much more to come in this race. On behalf of the entire team, thanks for watching the Rolex 24. Speed on Fox has been a great start. It's been an exciting start, and there is still so much more to come in this great American race. Who will win? We can tell you tomorrow.